Today is August 24th, 2023. My name is Melissa Ackerman, and I will be interviewing Joanie Weinstein as part of the JCC Past Presidents and Key Staff project that we're working on. Hi, Joanie. How are you?
Melissa,
So good to have you.
so good to be here. Thank you.
How did you end up at the Dallas JCC?
Oh my gosh. Shelley and I moved here with our children in 1969, and the year that we moved here, I worked at the JCC preschool as a preschool teacher, and then we had our third child, and so that was my retirement from that. And about 3 years later, I had a phone call from Ernie Siegel, who was the director then.
Who? What was the name?
Ernie Siegel.
Ernie Siegel, okay.
He was the director then, and he asked, because I was doing some volunteer work, so he knew me, and he called me and said, would I come back as the early childhood director? And I, at that time, said, no, I really couldn't work, even part-time. And so within a few months, he had it worked out so that I was working 2 half-days a week, and Hilda Lynn, who was the co-preschool director, worked 3 days a week. And at that time, the preschool was just half a day. So that's when I started. It was around 1973. And from there, I became the children's director. And then I became, when they opened the new building, I became the membership and special events and I had another title. Anyhow, so at that time, I changed positions and did that for a while. And then eventually I started doing special events and fundraising and then became the assistant director.
So how many total years did you work for the J before you retired?
I would say from 1973 to 2005.
Okay, so you worked with a lot of different executive directors over the years.
Executive directors, staff,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of wonderful volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Were there some key staff that you really particularly enjoyed working with?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us
Okay.
who, about any of them?
Well, yes. And you'll forgive me because I did write notes because I'm so afraid I'm going to miss this opportunity to mention someone. So as far as staff goes, Hilda Lynn was the first person I worked with at the J, and we worked together as preschool directors. And I mentioned Ernie Siegel, he was the director then. I had some wonderful staff people that I worked with. Elaine Traeger was my dear friend, and she was the marketing and PR director, and unfortunately, she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And then some other people that I really want to mention are Judy Cohen, Laura Seymour, who, God bless her, is still here working, and Shari Tobin, and Rusty Bell, and Lisa Brodsky, and Judy Goodman. The directors who were here after Ernie, Harry Rosen, and then after Harry was Karen Stern, and then Jay Jacobs, and now Artie.
Was Bob Weiss in there too?
Bob Weiss was there for a very short period of time.
Okay.
Maybe 6 months.
Okay. His name had come up in some of the other interviews.
He was there for a very short period of time.
Okay. Was your background in education before you came down here?
My background was in early childhood education.
Mm-hmm.
Was in education
Mm-hmm.
and elementary education actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, and that was my degree.
So you came down as a young married.
Yes, we came in 1969, and at that time, Shelley had just finished all his OB-GYN training and had 2 years in the Army where we lived in Washington, D.C. I mean, we both grew up in Pittsburgh and then moved to Washington, and then 1969 we moved here.
How'd you decide on Dallas?
Shelley had a wonderful practice offer, plus he had the opportunity to work at Southwestern Medical School teaching residents. So it was a combination of 2 things he loved to do, and So that brought us to Dallas, and I would say that there hasn't been a moment that we're sorry.
How has Dallas changed in the years that you've been here?
Oh my gosh. So in 1969, you didn't live north of LBJ. I mean, if you lived there, it was like being in more than Frisco, and Allen probably. There were, I think it was 1970, the Federation did a demographic study, and there were 20,000 Jewish people living in Dallas then. There was not a real Orthodox synagogue then. So that kind of tells you a lot. And I have no idea how many congregations there are now, and I can't even imagine how many people are in Dallas that are of Jewish faith. It's at least 70,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changed, but the whole city has changed. And part of that has to do with American Airlines moved here, their national headquarters, and JCPenney's moved their national headquarters. And those two I'll never forget, because when I was membership director, I received a lot of phone calls from men from New York City area who called. They and their families, their wives in particular, had never been out of that area. And their wives were really worried about moving to Texas. And so many of them, after they came and we welcomed them, said, I had no idea it was going to be so nice here. And, they've learned that Dallas is a great place to live, for sure.
How has the actual JCC changed over the years?
Well, building-wise, it was a small building. When we moved here, the name on the building was the Julius Sheps Community Center. And then it changed to the Jewish Community Center of Dallas, and then became the Aaron Family Jewish Community Center. But the building itself was much, much smaller, and then enlarged once and then enlarged twice since I've been here.
Mm-hmm. And who are some of the lay people that you've worked with over the years that you particularly enjoyed working with?
Okay, so Melissa, this is where I bring my list.
Okay.
Because there's so many, I thought about this and I thought, is it friends who were volunteers, or did they become my friends because they were volunteers? Both ways. I just had so many, including yourself, Melissa. But I don't want to...
Don't forget anybody, so refer to your list. And put your glasses on if you need to.
Thank you. Okay, so, well, I'll find my list.
You worked with a lot of lay people over the years.
A lot of people, and who really have become friends, dear friends. So, I have to start with Yannette Hoke, who, of course, is a past president. But Yannette was such a wonderful volunteer. And she and Kenny Goldberg, another wonderful volunteer and past president, both of them, were the Maccabi chairs for the very first Maccabi games held here.
And what was your role with Maccabi?
My role, I had retired and I came back to staff the special event part of that and the fundraising part of it.
And that was in 2005, I believe?
That sounds
that
right.
Maccabi, yes.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to mention some more names. Let's talk about the golf tournament, because I had never worked with just men before, and that in itself was a great experience. The golf tournament was so much fun. We created it, and how wonderful it is that it's still going on to this day. And Erwin Waldman's name was on it, and he was such a wonderful man, and what a wonderful past president he was. So, okay, I'm just going to mention some names because I don't want to forget them.
That's fine.
Ike Brown, Michael Augstein, Bobby Goodman, Harold Berman who was a early past president. He was one of the first chairs of the golf tournament, and he had retired from volunteering and got talked into doing this. And I think it's because of Harold that in a lot of ways the golf tournament is still alive and well today. So it's been a great fundraiser. Martin Coleman, can't talk about anything at the J without talking about Martin. And he was the president at the time of the first golf tournament. And I will never forget this because, excuse me, we're having the big first person teeing off, big ceremony, and Martin, who played golf, comes out with a tennis racket, tees up the ball, and then hits it with his racket. I mean, it was great. But Martin actually is responsible for the first event that I ever remember participating in for raising funds, and that was Texino. And that was held down in the gym. We had I think there was a little bit of gambling there, and it was the first time that I know, that we ever really raised money. And, okay, going back to others, I'm just gonna mention some names. Marilyn Schaefer, Wendy Stanley, Dan Prescott, Ann Stern, Barbara Stein, Marcy Levka, Sherry Goldberg, I made this list, Cindy Munn, I have you down, of course, and then the men that I mentioned, Bobby Goodman, Stuart Prescott, Michael Augstein, and of course, Yannette and Kenny, and so many of the past presidents.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been amazing. And there's nothing that a staff person in the position that I held could ever do without the best volunteers. You just can't do it yourself.
Was the board active when you were working?
Yes, board was very active.
Mm-hmm.
And the presidents were, being president is an unbelievable responsibility. It's like another job.
Mm-hmm.
And Ann Stern was the first woman president, and that was special. And then Yannette was the second. We still call Yannette the Homotzi Queen, but she's still so active.
Mm-hmm. Yes. When you were over membership and doing all your jobs, what kind of things were done to help raise the membership, increase the membership? Were there any initiatives that were done to try to get people to join, get people to stay active?
We had a wonderful membership committee, and I'm sure there's one to this day that would come up with ideas. We did things such as had contributing membership. We started a contributing membership category, and I think.
And what was that?
That was, let's say that a family membership was $300. So there were two levels above that, and one might have been another $100, and another might have been $200. And there were some benefits to doing that, but like free guest passes and things like that. But basically, it was asking people to make a donation in the name of membership. And on the very first time that we did that, Martin was part of that, and we held a contributing membership party at someone's home. And I always remember that. I think it's because the people that made the phone calls, but there was an incredible number of people that upgraded to a contributing membership. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of that. But the thing I don't want to let pass is the fact that the JCC gives scholarships.
I was going to ask about
and that was one of the things, as membership director, that I did. I interviewed the scholarship people. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how kind and caring the center is. Mm-hmm. And people should know that. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone here isn't here because they can afford to pay the full thing.
Right.
And so it was, it's always been camp, preschool, membership. If you have a need, you come to the J and someone will help you.
Yes, you didn't want to turn anybody away because they couldn't afford to be part of it.
You don't want, and especially preschool and camp, you don't want mm-hmm. children not to have the opportunity right. to be with other Jewish children in mm-hmm. this kind of environment.
Absolutely. Do you think that Dallas was a cohesive community or divisive as far as the Jewish community goes?
I don't know that it was divisive. It was, I grew up in Pittsburgh, which was, if you want to talk about cohesive, there was an area in Pittsburgh called, there still is, called Squirrel Hill, where 90% of the people, I think, were Jewish. I went to a high school that was predominantly Jewish. So that was my background. So when I came here, and as I said, there were like 20,000 Jewish people. North Dallas was really the area where everybody was living. And the positioning of putting this JCC on this spot was, I'm sure the leaders really thought about it long and hard. And this was a great location. So, and this still is a great location.
So this was considered North Dallas.
Yes.
And it was much further north than the original J before
Right,
they
well,
came up.
the original J, which I'm certainly not familiar with, but was in what they called South Dallas, and then this is the spot they moved it to. And when we moved here in '69, there was a nice outdoor pool. The building was, I don't know how many square feet, but it was quadrupled when they built the first enlargement, which I think was in '75, but I'm not sure.
Did you and your family live in North Dallas?
We lived like 2 blocks from here when we moved to Dallas. We were told to live near the J, and someone helped us to find a house, and it was right near the J. So, and this was a great location.
Did your children participate in activities
Our
at the J?
children participated in everything at the J. Preschool, children's activities. As they got older, BBYO was housed here upstairs, and they participated in BBYO, they participated in camp. There was a tween program, and they participated in that. So and all the sports. We have a daughter and 2 boys, and the boys were very involved in sports here.
Tell me a little bit more about your family.
Okay, thank you. Well, my husband, Shelley, is now retired, and he was an OB-GYN. And we have 3 children, and we are more than blessed. We're blessed with our kids, but we have the wonderful thing that all our children live here. So, and not too many people can say that. So we're very blessed. Our daughter, Ellen, is married to Josh Ungerman, and they have 2 children. Sloan is the oldest, and Sloan is now, I'm bragging, but he is now a lawyer practicing in New York City. And then Samantha, his sister, is a senior right now at University of Texas at Austin. Then I have Craig, who has 3 boys, and the oldest one just started Washington University, and Daniel, the middle one, is a senior, and then Benjamin, who's the youngest of everybody, is 15, almost 16. And then Michael and Allison have 2 children, and Allison, by the way, just opened a bakery. I'll make a pitch for that. It's called Sugar and Sage, and it's on Douglas and Lovers Lane. Okay, and anyhow, their eldest.
It's fine. Energy conservation.
Oh, okay, that's good. All right, so anyhow, Alice and Michael have 2 children. Their eldest, Carter, is a junior at Georgetown, and Ashley is a junior in high school.
That's wonderful.
So everyone in our family is in Dallas except now. Now we have a lawyer in New York.
Okay, but he comes to Dallas periodically, I assume.
But we're just blessed to have our children here. So lucky.
Is your family close?
Yes.
And the cousins all know each other well?
Yes. Very much so.
Were there some special kind of ways that you used to observe holidays, or any special traditions that you would want to tell us about?
Shelley and I are both only children, so having family, holidays together is really incredible. Now it's, everybody shares, and, I don't have it in my home anymore. I have, the others really have taken over, but we're just so lucky to have everybody in Dallas.
Did you belong to a synagogue?
We belong to Sheriff Israel. And one of the things that I should be sure and mention is that as I mentioned, Shelley and I are both from Pittsburgh, and eventually our parents moved here. Shelley's mother had passed away prior to our coming here, so his dad actually moved here with us and remarried, and married a wonderful woman, Anna Goldman. And they were wonderful. And then my parents moved here, and unfortunately my mother passed away. So at one point we had a very interesting situation. We had both of our dads living with us. And so the two Sams lived with us for a period of time. And they came here every day. They came
As part of the senior
They
program?
were part of the senior program. They were here every day.
Do you keep up with a lot of the people that you worked with over the years?
Yes, I do. As I said before, I don't know whether they were my friends that became volunteers or volunteers that became my friends, but yes, some of my very dearest friends are people that I worked with as volunteers here.
That's great. In relation to your time at the JCC, of what are you most proud?
Oh gosh, that's tough.
You can have more than one.
Okay, well, proud is proud to have been a part of it, okay. And, I don't know what I could say I'm most proud of. I'm happy that I was here, and I was able to be here for as long as I was. I think about the fundraising that we did that enabled the center to grow and to be what it is. And I was certainly most proud, I guess, of the scholarships that I was able to be part of. But the fundraising was really important. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, of course, about that first fundraiser, Texino, but then the really first fundraiser that we had that was really an event was held when Harlan Pollock was president. And I remember that because he and Harry Rosen came to me and said, we don't have anyone on the staff to do this, and we've been given a great opportunity. Neiman Marcus, someone in Neiman Marcus knew Harlan and came to Harlan and said, we're looking for an organization to benefit an event we want to do. And we wanted to be a couples event, and we're going to have Bob Mackey. And Bob Mackey, for those who don't know, was a major fashion designer. And having met him, he's the nicest man. Anyhow, we had this first event. It was at the Hilton downtown, and it was a couples event, and it was a fashion show with Neiman presenting the fashions, and that was really quite something. And then I think about the last event that I was really involved with, and that was the first B event. And that was the one that honored the Aaron family. And it was held, I can't tell you the year, but it was held during the time when the center was having fiscal problems, as was the general community. And that event honoring the Aaron family raised $1 million. And wow, I mean, that's a wow. Mm-hmm. So, and that's because of all the people that worked on it, and it's because of all the people that love the Aarons as well. So that's really something to mention.
Were you one of the people that got the Aarons involved, Carol involved?
Yes. Okay, so this is my Carol Aaron story. Carolyn has been a friend for a long time. And Yannette was president of the J. And we were talking about, at that point we were having events. But we needed to raise more money. And so Yannette and I were talking, and we both said, let's talk to Carol. She has so many friends and so many connections. maybe she could help us. So we called Carol and arranged to have lunch with her. And what we said to Carol is, you don't have to do anything. We just want your name. So I love telling that story because a few years later, her name is on the building. So, yeah, Carol and Steve have been more than generous to the J, to put it mildly, and she's still just the most wonderful supporter. And of course, seeing her daughter, Angela, become president is also special. And so anyhow, that's my Carol Aaron story, and she's still a dear friend. So when she sees us, I hope she's not too angry.
She won't be angry. Have your kids been involved in the JCC as adults?
Yes, thank you for asking. Ellen has been very involved at the J, chaired many events, but Ellen was on the board, and then she was an officer of the J. So proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In your life, are there any special events or special things that you're most proud of, not related to the J?
Oh, my children and grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I have to mention about my life at the J, it's kind of strange, but when you work full-time, and I'm sure all the women who are watching this will understand that you have some guilt because you're not home with the children for everything that you think maybe you should have done. And I decided I was not going to be a missing grandparent because I was so lucky to have them here. So I decided I retired and planned it, like 9 months in advance. And there was a wonderful thank you party for me when I retired. And that was around the year 2000. And so that was very nice, and I retired. Well, about 3 months later, I got a phone call, and it was Karen Stern is leaving, and there's always a national search to find an executive director, and we just need someone to be an acting director in the meantime. So I said, okay. So I had my first retirement, so then I came back, and I was director for a while, and I'll get back to that in a minute. And then Jay Jacobs was hired. Okay, so I retired again. And then the Maccabi was coming to Dallas, and it was the very first time it was going to be in Dallas. And Jay called me and said, look, I know you've retired twice already. Would you give it a third shot and work on the fundraising and the events? And so I said yes, and did. And that was really quite a wonderful experience. Never forget the number of people who were involved in this, volunteers. I mean, every community that we talked to that had already had Maccabi said that it's very hard to get homes. Very hard because you host all the Maccabi participants, and it's really hard to get volunteers. We had none of that. We had more homes than we needed. We had more volunteers than we could ever imagine, and it was just a huge success, and it was just wonderful. So that was my third and last retirement after the Maccabi Games, but it was a good way to leave.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else on your notes that we have not touched on?
Okay, well, I appreciate your mentioning that, so I can take a quick look and see. I'll tell you what I do need to mention. I do need to mention Mike Hirsch in particular, because when I became the acting director, Mike Hirsch was the president. And Mike is a very smart man and has so many business skills and personality, good, kind person. But fortunately for me, he had all those business skills. So I was very blessed to have a president who could help me out with things that I really didn't feel confident doing. Unfortunately, when I was the acting director, 9/11 happened. And, you know, it's a day in your life that everybody can say, I know what I was doing then, and I can tell you I know what I was doing then. I was here. And I'll never forget coming from my car, and it was probably early, like 8 o'clock in the morning, and hearing about the first plane going to the World Trade Center. And within an hour, everybody here was watching television and watching. So at that time, we had a second JCC. It was in Plano. And the first phone call that I got that was of any significance was from the Plano police chief. And he called to say that they're very concerned about bombing any place in the United States, and that we have an Israeli flag hanging in Plano at the J, and that we should take it down immediately. And so we did. But that was one of the worst days I've ever had as a staff person. You know, you just can't imagine going through anything like that. And for days and days after that, we had to rethink things and get security. And so that just happens to be one of the things I always remember.
Yeah, and at that time, there weren't the security gates or any of the...
Everything happened after the fact, yeah. So, and I do have to mention again that Laura Seymour, who, God bless her, she is wonderful, and she's done so much for the J. And her husband, Jeff, the same. He was just always the best. He was a wonderful president. He was a wonderful volunteer. So, as I said, I was blessed to have good volunteers. Good volunteers made me look good.
Well, you looked good because you were a great staff to work with. And the J has been lucky to have you for all these years. And I really appreciate you sitting down to talk to me about this. Thank you, Joanie.
Thank you.